that, just hit the present button and I'll open up. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's episode of John with Jack. I'm the Jack you're looking for. Today, I have with me Timothy Imholt, who is an author, a physicist, and an entrepreneur. And we're going to be talking to him about all of those things and might even squeeze in a little chat about tabletop role-playing games this evening. Now, Tim, besides the completely, perfectly adequate introduction I've given you, well, how do you like to introduce yourself to people?
I don't know. Everybody always asks me so this will sum me up pretty quickly. Everybody always asks me, it's like, so what do you do for a living? I'm like, I don't know. It's never really been made clear to me. So it's, I kind of just sort of whatever the day brings, that's sort of the direction I go these days. And having teenage kids, it's like, that can be a whole lot of weird stuff. So
teenagers do increase the amount of chaos in one's life, in my experience.
And pizza. It increases enormously the amount of pizza.
That goes without saying. I think everything increases pizza. Like, the amount of pizza in the universe just continues to rise exponentially as the heat death progresses. By the end, it's going to be nothing but cold and pizza.
Exactly. So
now, my traditional first question, being this is a tabletop role-playing game centered show, is how did you get started in the hobby of role-playing games? What was your first game and what was your first experience like?
My first rule book, if you will, I still have. It's that one. From way back when it came in one book and still had 3 holes punched in the side. So it's probably about, 82, 83 someplace.
Got it. And that's the mold vase set specifically, right?
The mold vase set. I do not have the dice anymore, but I got it as a Christmas present or something. Because you hear about it and you're like, oh, I want I want that, right? It was in the Sears catalog. Where my mother picked it up, who knows? But my first adventure in playing was probably Keep on the Borderlands, because that's the book that came with it, right? And everybody used that one first. And my dad was the dungeon master. And one of the things that kind of got me hooked on the hobby was the way my dad played the dungeon master, because I'd never played before. So Christmas Day, my dad, who played a lot of Avalon Hill games, was like, "Oh, we got to figure out how to play this, and let's go do a thing." But I didn't. Right? And I do remember that my dad, when he was playing the tavern keeper, and you're trying to get information out of the tavern keeper, I'm like, I'll spend a gold piece or I'll spend whatever it was, and I'll buy you an ale. Dad would make you go get a beer out of the fridge, so you could properly role play, bribing him with drinks to get information. So I felt that was a really good DM trick. I haven't used that one yet, but someday I will. But I've been playing a while. So. I'm sorry?
Pardon me, a bit of a frog in my throat.
That happens. So I've been around the hobby a while. Like anybody else, I've had years where I didn't play, and I'm kind of back in playing again. And as you can see, I've got kind of a lot of different versions, and I'm not being attacked by any of the versions. I actually own those. It's okay to have that one sitting next to them. It's about the people at the table, not the edition of the game. I really don't care which edition you play, as long as you have fun. Some of them are more sandboxy than others. I prefer the sandboxy approach. Like my kids don't. They kind of prefer the newer approach. But for everybody who kind of laments and goes, "Oh, there's no sandboxy RPGs," I dare you to look at Gamma World. So,
yes.
It is about as sandboxy as you're ever going to get.
And I'm definitely in that camp too. Like my personal play style, I tend to prefer sandboxes and that sort of wide open setting that you can engage with.
Well, yeah, but those of us that have been playing for 30 years, probably, that's okay. If you're brand new, maybe not as much. But it depends.
I'm sympathetic to that. I do. I can see where like what we did in the early days might not appeal to kids nowadays. Just like, when I was a kid that age, playing jacks or marbles didn't seem like such a cool, hip thing to me.
Yeah, and you got to get the attention out of kids who've got a lot more options than we had, right? Because we had one TV in the house, And if your dad wanted to watch something, your night was done because that was what you were watching.
Yeah. But
Uh,
don't go anywhere because I need someone to change the channel for me.
yeah, maybe you have cable, maybe you don't, right? So it kind of depended. And when I was when I was even younger, we didn't have cable because nobody had it, but you had 3 or 4 channels, and if the president was on, your night was just over, right? Because he was going to,
Right. Yeah. Might as well just pack it in.
yeah. But I've been around it a while, and so we had hours and hours and hours to figure this stuff out because we didn't have 53 options, right? So here in my living room, everybody's living room, you've got video game consoles, you've got streaming options, you've got YouTube, tablets, smartphones. You got to compete with all that stuff, and some of that sandboxing may not appeal to everybody. I'm
Right.
not saying as real. Some of it gets really, really railroady, and I get the argument against that. But to each their own, right? You need to grab that new audience. Some
Well,
people
and
like
that's
railroad.
that's the thing. Nobody can argue with that fundamental truth that, like, well, whatever you're doing at your table, if everybody's having fun and keeps coming back week after week, how can you define it as anything other than a successful game?
Exactly.
But at the same time, I do feel that there is legitimately a lot of room for doing things certain ways will be definitively better. I think there is room to have those conversations for no matter what you're doing. Yeah, everybody's having fun, but you could still be running an even better game than you're running. There could be more details you add.
Sure,
No,
but every DM has an on night and an off night, right? So it's like I'm in the Tuesday night game for Dungeon Delvers channel.
right.
And there's night Dungeon Delver's having a great night and he's really into it. There's other nights Dungeon Delver's like, all right, all right, it's like so, just because everybody has good days and bad, right? So
Yeah,
it's
that
just
is
the way it
true.
goes.
That is true. I mean,
And
I can understand that. And he has been doing that continuously for years now. I know he's a long-term first edition player, but how long has that particular campaign been going? Hasn't it been
oh,
quite a while?
5, 6 years, right? So
Right.
I'm
And
I'm
that's
kind
just
of
as long
newer
month.
to it, but it's been going a long time. And he's very detail oriented. He doesn't give a whole ton of saving throws. You might have a chance to get saved, but it's first
Right.
edition. Let's face it. You know,
It's pretty deadly by default if you use the rules as written.
yeah, and owlbears are not necessarily friendly.
Yes,
Um,
they're kind of automatically not really.
yeah, pretty much. So he's a great guy. He's a great DM. Um, but it's a game where especially for online streaming, everybody's used to Critical Role. I'm like, yeah, but we don't do table reads. We don't do talk aheads. We just kind of show up and play, right? Whatever happens, happens.
Right.
And sometimes the party's into role playing, deep role playing. Sometimes the party's into hack and slash, just run through the dungeon, right? It just kind of depends on the.
Yeah, and that can vary from night to night, just what mood your players are in.
Yeah, because sometimes it's like, and it's on a Tuesday night, right? So everybody's sort of in the older age bracket, and so crap, we kind of dated everybody have at work.
Right,
So
right. The
it's like,
one positive thing you can say about Tuesday is it's not Monday.
yeah, well, that's true. Um,
Deadly by default. Dungeons and Dragons, great. Bank loans, not so good.
that's true. Um,
And Laxmere, this is also on Rumble and YouTube. I forgot to attach those to the post, so I'll do that in retrospect. But yeah, there are links for this. If you follow me on YouTube, it's currently live there. If you follow me on Rumble, it's currently live there. And if you follow me on X, it's currently live there. And that seems to be where you're listening. That seems where I get most of my people.
yeah, X is probably my biggest channel, to be honest.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm very new to social media in general, which is especially why I wanted to talk to you about that later in the show. But like X was the first one I really took to. The only other social media I kind of liked and took to fairly well was Google Plus, ironically. So you know how that worked out. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I like what's going on here. What do you mean there? It's going away? I was just getting comfortable. So
yeah, it's the social media landscape is interesting because there's always these little players that pop up, and people are like, oh, you got to be on this one. I'm like, yeah, but there's only like 30 people on it, and I really don't care that much.
yeah, that's the thing. I've dabbled in oh, just want to be where the other people are in the chat. Well, That's true. Actually, I wish there was a central chat location for like Restream, so everybody, my Rumble people could talk to my X people and so on and so forth. But
Yeah, that the back end stuff doesn't even let you do that. So it
I had a feeling.
yeah, YouTube's not going to let you post their comments over. It doesn't.
Yeah, and actually, that's the thing. One of the reasons I've settled on Restream, which I'm using today, is because it was the easiest platform to send video both to YouTube and Rumble. Like Rumble Studio doesn't want to send stuff to YouTube, and YouTube Studio doesn't want to send stuff to Rumble. It's very inconvenient.
I get what they're doing. They're trying to keep people on their platform, but at the same time, we're trying to grow everywhere, right? So it's sort of
right. And again, you don't know which part is going to kick off. Like I didn't think much about Instagram, but for some reason, I got a ton of followers over there. I don't. In fact, I'm just using that as a hypothetical example. But yeah, I don't have a lot of followers anywhere. Close, whereas I'm cozying up to your respectable 12,000 followers on X. I'm like, okay, I need to take some notes here. Now, you mentioned Gamma World a few minutes ago, so clearly that's on your gaming table. What other games have grabbed your attention over the years? What's your favorite?
Lately, I've been picking up a couple of indie ones, and I'm looking at my shelf behind me to remind myself which ones are back there. I picked up Fallout, which is pretty cool, actually. I picked out Blade Runner has its own RPG now, which I thought was really
yes, I've heard almost exclusively good things about it, actually.
Yeah. And I recently picked up Spelljammer, and I've yet to have a chance to actually go through it, but I modded a couple months back, and it seems pretty cool.
Did you ever get exposed to the second edition Spelljammer stuff when it first came out?
No, I didn't. So that's kind of new to me. So
I love it personally. I surprisingly, the people who were more familiar with the old stuff didn't seem to be heaping praise on this new Spelljammer book, from my recollection.
I take that with a grain of salt, because I think some of the edition wars get really crazy. So I kind of go with, if you got one and you like it, just have fun with it, right? And because I posted that on X one day, and the first 5 comments were, "Oh, too bad it's the new version." I'm like,
yeah. Hey,
okay.
Look, a bowl of Cheerios. Somebody's going to piss in that. Like, come on, people. Let me have just a moment of joy.
Yeah, it's like earlier on X, I posted something about documentaries, right? So and nostalgia is hard to overcome, but sometimes people need to just
heck yeah.
Stop it. It's like earlier on X, I posted something, and I'm going to read it because I had a point this morning to it. When I was a kid, we had these things called documentaries, where they would show you things you wanted to learn about: the pyramids, space shuttles, Saturn V rockets, power stations. Now we have documentaries or content showing people's reactions as they look at something, but for some reason they never actually show you the thing. They just show you the reaction of the person that's looking at it, and that's sort of what we've slid in its place. And some of the comments were like, "Well, you're just watching the wrong stuff. You should watch this one." And it's like people were telling me stuff about, "Oh, I found this one where this guy was covering various speculative evolution projects. You should watch that." I'm like, okay, the word speculation and documentary
don't go together.
I'm just going to go with that's not.
Yeah. That's like when things are definitely vague.
Yeah. I was thinking more like James Burke, right? Where we used to have that show Connections.
Yes.
And
that takes us right back around to Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, everything rides around to Kevin Bacon. But I would love to have, actual documentaries again where we actually learn things instead of Oak Island. And this week we're going to find wood. Was it left there by depositors or by explorers? I'm like, it's
Finding Bigfoot.
It's an island called Oak Island. The odds that they're going to find wood are roughly 100%. So
roughly 100%, but not actually 100%, because you can't say anything. Heisenberg tells us you can't say anything with 100% certainty.
99.9999999. Yeah, pretty close.
So, what about sci-fi gaming? Do you have a favorite sci-fi game?
Um, yeah, I think so far out of the ones I've really played, I think probably Gamma World. Um, it's post-apocalyptic, but it's sort of sci-fi-ish. Um, I think, yeah, we see you on the chat there. Yeah.
Kvothe Shadakar.
Uh,
Kvothe, please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name, but I do really like that name.
I can't find it on my shelf really quickly. I have to go through my modules, but um, I like the sci-fi in RPG, and it kind of became a thing back when Expedition to Barrier Peaks came out. Which,
Great module. I got a copy on my shelf.
yeah, if anybody's not familiar with it, it's a D&D module, but it has like a crashed alien vessel with laser pistols and rifles that you can pick up in the D&D universe. Right? So
For those trivia-minded people, if you are familiar with the first edition DMG and you see stats for laser pistols and stuff like that, those stats came from Expedition to the Barrier Peak, if memory serves.
they did. So, I kind of enjoy that just pulling those sci-fi elements in. And one thing that I will say now that you bring it up is when I was a kid, and this is 80s. I mean, I was born in 72, so 70s count, but I was too young to go to bookstores by myself. Um, when I was a kid going to bookstores, there was a science fiction section and there was a fantasy section, and now there's a sci-fi fantasy section,
Yes.
and it's mostly fantasy. So,
It's mostly fantasy. Good sci-fi has historically always been hard to come by and seems to be becoming more rare as time goes on.
yeah, and I gave my son one to read. My son is 14. I've got two sons, but the one that's 14, he's gotten kind of into reading lately. So I gave him this book called "The Moon is a Harsh Mistress," which is possibly one of the best, most interesting science fiction books I've ever read. Have you read that one?
Not familiar with it. I know the title by reputation.
Okay, so for anybody who hasn't read it, I am a scientist, and I will highly recommend this book. Not because the science is so great, but the concept is just freaking cool. Okay, so it's written by Robert Heinlein, who he wrote it. I mean, remember,
Starship
it's
Troopers and numerous other
60s.
things.
I mean, it's an older book, so there's some things in it. People now would be like, "Oh, the treatment of women." I'm like, okay, first off, the treatment of women in it is bad, but it's not nearly as bad as it could have been given when it was written. Right? So
Yes.
we'll go with that. He was largely a libertarian guy, so that kind of comes through in his writing because he was largely I like small governments, right? Um, and that clearly came through. But the concept of the moon as a harsh mistress was really simple. It was, hey, they're going to turn the moon into a penal colony, but kind of like Australia. But because it's the moon, you really don't necessarily need guards all that much. You kind of need a few to make sure riots don't happen.
Right,
But
right.
and the deal is, you go mine stuff on the moon we need, and we'll send you food and oxygen, right? That's kind of the trade-off. And
No
if
way
you don't
that could
send
go
us what
wrong.
we need, we're not sending you what you need, right? Simple stuff. But a couple generations down, 2, 3, 4 generations down, you wind up with indigenous lunar inhabitants who were born there and have always lived there. So they decided that lunar inhabitants,
Loonies. I love it.
needed their own rights, so they were going to secede. And they got all these supercomputers up there. They got all this other stuff up there, and they decide, hey, we're going to go, start a war with Earth. Well, they didn't have a lot of weapons, but they were really good at sending stuff back to Earth because the way they would do it was take a giant catapult and kind of hurl it at the Earth. And
Oh,
when you
yeah.
get
So they had something that could hurl large rocks at the Earth, essentially.
exactly,
I almost can see where that's going.
except you take the retro rockets off that slow it down, or you take the system off that slows it down as it gets closer to Earth, and you're like, okay, cool, I'll just start pummeling you with things, right? It took them a couple of minutes to destroy Cheyenne Mountain and missile
Right.
defense underneath it, because what's the terminal velocity of a 2-ton rock? And if you can
A
aim
lot.
it,
Yes.
you
Yes.
don't need nukes, right? So, well, what happens when you start sending spaceships at the moon to try to come stop them? Well, we'll just throw a bunch of rocks that way. It's all good. Yes.
Yeah. And instead of one big rock, it'll be a big boatload of gravel. So it'll be like shrapnel going through space.
But it's going really fast, right?
But
So
it's
it's
going
going,
really
but it's-
fast. Yeah.
and I thought it was one of the best sci-fi books. I've read it probably 2 or 3 times, but it's one of the better science fiction books I've ever come across. Just because the concept was so freaking cool, and
I
it
love that. I love that.
yeah, and it was just sort of. I will say it's hard sci-fi. You know, can I find something in there that doesn't work? Sure. Can I find a few concepts in there that are sort of outdated? Sure. But
Well, see, now that's my perspective on sci-fi in general. I have never read or seen the story that seems completely airtight, like in
yeah,
scientific principles or whatnot. What's the closest one that you've experienced? This one clearly, the Loonies. I'm sorry, what was the title of that again?
the moon is a harsh mistress.
The Moon is a Harsh Mistress.
Um, it's I don't know if you call it sci-fi, but there's one that is really close to probably absolutely correct by Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle writing as a team called Lucifer's Hammer. It's sci-fi, but post-apocalyptic. It's actually pre-apocalypse. He chose the apocalypse, post-apocalyptic, kind of has it all.
Okay.
And the concept is this astronomer discovers a comet. Oh, look, the comet might hit us, right? And we see that in the news every once in a while. It's like, oh, this thing coming at us might hit us.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
this one really did. It's
Yeah.
bad thing.
Yeah. Hey,
Right.
I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that there is no way that one's going to hit us. Why? Because they're talking about it.
Yeah,
The one that's going to hit us, they're not going to talk about.
exactly. But now this one, they were like, no, it won't hit us. It won't hit us. Won't hit us. And at the last minute, oops, we kind of made a mistake. And what, so the story goes, when they first pitched it, they pitched the book as hey, we want to show what happens to the world after a comet hits, and we're going to show the comet strike, and then kind of trying to put the world back together and see who survives and who doesn't. And their editor went, no, 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 no. Wait, or their agent was like, no, 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 no. But the first act one is we discover the comet, and that's life as we know it. Act two is, oh crap, what just happened to us? And act three is, how do we put it back together, right? And are we warring with tribe? Are we tribal little war units going on? Or it was probably the closest to way that would actually play out of anything I've seen.
Okay.
And the destruction that occurred with the comet was absolutely right. I mean, it was just dead on. And we know that not because of when it's hit us, but in our lifetime, one actually hit Jupiter. I think it was, yeah. Shoemaker Levy
I
9.
recall that one
Yeah.
because I remember the Scuttlebutt talking about that. That's the prime example of how Jupiter has been sort of a comet and asteroid shield for us throughout our planet's history.
The moon does really get at that too. But it smacked that one. So we know exactly kind of what happens when one of those things hits us. And that actually occurred after they wrote the book. They wrote the book back in the 70s. I actually have a first edition of it, and oddly enough, it was by Playboy Press.
Well, back
picture.
in the time, you didn't want to
Okay.
release too alarming of an idea to the masses. Well, we don't want to panic people to make them think that this could really happen.
Yeah, and there's no pictures. Sorry.
Nope. Yeah, no pictures.
But it's a good book. It's probably just as just dead on as you're ever going to find. Now, speaking of sci-fi, one of the things that does drive me nuts as a scientist is I'll have people come up to me, and I've had this happen in real life, not on the internet, of someone who is a functioning adult with a real job, white collar, goes to an office, sits with people, and makes decisions that affect something. I think he's a lawyer. I was at this Christmas party, and this guy was like dead serious. He's like, we have Martian colonies, right? I'm like, it's like, as a scientist, we have Martian colonies. I'm like, where are you going with this? It's like,
yeah.
Like get to Lydia. But like, how are we getting this food to them? Oh, and you're a scientist, so those transporter kind of things of Star Trek, we can really make that work. I'm like, no, we can't.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to let it go, and it's like, and this was in person, so I'm just like, you know what? I'm not even going to argue. I'm just going to smile and nod. Small.
Yeah, yeah. It's normally one of those. Oh, yeah, you guys are right. Keep going. It's
Yeah, I'm
I've
like,
had similar experiences interacting with flat earthers.
oh my god, those are
That's
moon landing people.
and you know what? Hey, here's the thing. I'll say at the outset, I respect them and do not blame them for asking the questions that they're asking. But one of the things I learned about myself trying to do that is I said, "Oh yeah, oh yeah." Just because I don't understand it doesn't mean it's bullshit. So, so
Fair
that
point.
because that was exactly the experience that what I wanted to say to the people. Okay, look, just because I try to explain what I understand and know myself, but no, ain't happening.
I,
That doesn't make any sense.
I did point out that Star Trek transporters became a thing on Star Trek because when they were developing it for TV, they thought shuttlecraft would take too long.
Yes.
So they came
Yeah.
up with, hey,
And
yeah,
moreover, they didn't want to spend the special effects budget on it. It would have been way more expensive for them to build shuttles and have them getting on and getting off and stuff like that.
so it was a mother of invention came from necessity, and transporters were born.
Do
So yeah,
Do you think that is a trend that bears itself out in history, sort of like how Jules Verne wrote about submarines and spaceships and rocketry and stuff that long before the science was even in its infancy, right?
well, I mean,
Are
rockets. The Chinese had rockets a very long time ago, right? And uh, the submarines were kind of a concept from the time of Isaac Newton, give or take.
right, and I
Uh,
even recall hearing that certain Viking longships they learned how to stretch hides over the top, and it would it would function like normal, but they could go distances underwater.
yeah, so I mean, is it purely, did he just kind of come up with it? I don't know. Maybe he came up with a pretty advanced version of it. Oh, I will put that in the chat. I don't know that I can put that in the chat. Where do I put
So
that?
there is on the bottom right of the restream window, there is a chat icon that should open up the group chat so you can address everyone in the chat here.
Is it real? Okay, I'm not seeing. Oh, it says private chat. I can only do that one. Maybe?
So there's a private, I don't know if it's different for you because I invited, but I see the private chat on the bottom left of my screen. Over on the right, I see design captions, QR codes,
Ah,
music
see,
notes.
I don't have that, but the second book, if you put it in there, was called Lucifer's Hammer.
Lucifer's Hammer, yes.
Yes, and it's amazing. It's 50 years old at this point, but it's an amazing book.
Now I've heard about it. There was another one. I think I read an Arthur C. Clarke book that was. It was not that one, but it was a similar premise that they found. They were trying to divert the killer asteroid, but not doing so well. And that one was strange because the story featured an apocalyptic cult arising that was a mix of Christianity and Islam that called themselves Chrislam. It was a little weird, not the best work from Arthur C. Clarke I've ever read, but it was a respectable novel in and of itself.
So I actually got to sit in on a meeting that involved how do we stop one if we actually find one coming our way.
Okay.
It was because we've all seen Bruce Willis.
Armageddon, duh.
And Deep Impact actually hit us, right? But you got
Yes.
Armageddon, and you can go up and maybe save us if you send Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck. And that's not really how you fix it. Setting up some drillers to kind of drill in and fracture it in half, that doesn't really fix the thing. What you have to do is find it way early and send up a whole bunch of nukes one at a time, right? So you slightly nudge it off course using nuclear weapons slowly over time.
Right. And hope that you don't nudge it into an alternate intercept course by accident, because I think that's been used in a few stories here and there where it's like, oh, hey, great, we averted the original course, but now it's on another course where it's going to hit us even more flush or something like that.
Yeah, well, hopefully we could figure that one out. But and the trick is you find them far out and sort of gently nudge. That's
gently nudge it, right?
The trouble is, if you look at spacecraft that we have today, like if you go back to the Saturn V, which we haven't launched since the 70s, right? We haven't built anything like that since the late 1970s or early 1970s.
Yeah.
We hadn't been out of low Earth orbit with anything appreciable in a long time. And
Yeah,
if you
not
ask us,
since the moon mission, practically, really.
yeah, every once in a while we'll send a probe up that can kind of go out, but it's like really tiny. They're not big.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm not sure we have rocket. I mean, we probably have a few rockets laying around that could kind of get you there. SpaceX probably has one. But if you need to send up a bunch of them, I'm not sure we could do it with the tech we have on hand anymore.
Oh, right, right. Well,
Yeah.
and it makes me wonder just how functional the ICBM arsenal we have is after so many years, because those rockets degrade as well. And I kind of, in my mind of minds, I keep thinking, well, if we do get an alien fleet in orbit, I wonder if the ICBMs can reach them from the ground.
Oh, if we can get into low Earth orbit, no problem. It's high Earth orbit that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And we can send little things out further because there's a couple of companies that are sending stuff out that go even further. But it's tiny things like a couple of kilograms.
Mm-hmm.
And but since we're talking about space and space travel, and we were talking about documentaries, I want to show people something, and let's see if I can share it on the screen here. Best TV shot ever. Probably not going to bring the audio across because it never really does. There used to be fantastic documentaries when I was a kid, right? I mean, just amazing stuff. And they've kind of gone away.
Yeah.
And speaking of, the Saturn V, here is one laying on its side, acting as a lawn ornament, as James Burke, the documentarian, walks past it. And James is talking about how rocket fuel works because you get these two volatile elements, you mix them together, and you light a spark. And next thing you know, it's not stopping for anybody because it's hydrogen and oxygen with fire, right? And it's going to go. But if you keep those two things separate and no spark, you're okay. No oxygen, the hydrogen is not going to burn up. The oxygen is probably not going to burn up too much on its own. Mix them together, and you've got the Saturn V. But James Burke pulled off this just once in a lifetime thing where he was walking along, he was talking about it. That was obviously pre-recorded, but this next bit was live. You get one shot at doing this. This is how good the man was. And he's like, and if you mix them together properly and light a spark, you get that.
Yes.
And see, my timing was off, but he gets it exactly right. And now you could do this with CGI, but this dude did it live.
Yeah, he really timed it, listening to the countdown, knew just what was going to happen.
And
that's
boom, there you go,
amazing. Right? God, that is amazing.
He was the man when it came to documentaries for a long time. He's still around. He's still doing them, and he actually dates back to the Apollo missions where he was doing it for BBC.
Wow,
for Apollo, and he's still working. He had something come out a couple of years ago.
That's
what's weird is he will answer email, like on his website. He will actually answer you if you email him because apparently he's still trying to figure out how to work.
Oh, well then, I'll reach out and invite him on the show. I don't know if he games, but maybe I'll break him into gaming on the show. It's like, look, I brought you on because you're an eminent documentarian of all types and stuff like that. But really, we're nerds here to roll some dice and play some characters.
And he's British, so I don't know if he's
right. Yeah. Well, British, that's as good as being a D&D character, practically. It's like the same thing. You got the linguistics part of it.
But he had one of the best lines ever on one of his documentaries. That he goes, well, what do we do in Britain? Well, we do what all good British citizens do. We sit around and talk about the weather. I don't know if that's true, but apparently it was.
Modern documentaries have stopped being great because they stopped using a strong narration. I don't think that's the only reason. I think that's more, I think that's a debatable ox or cart situation. Did they become shite because they stopped having strong narration, or did they stop having strong narration because they became shite?
So interestingly, the tweet I was telling you about, I checked out to make sure this person was real, but one of the editors for Oak Island showed up in my comment feed. This is what happens when your Twitter account gets too big. You wind up with really interesting people showing up in your comment feed. Like Rob Kuntz shows up all the time.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think he ever sleeps, and he lives in France, so he's always commenting on
Right.
stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you know.
And Rob, if you're listening, love you, man. But yeah, somebody showed up in my comment feed that was one of the editors for Oak Island, and I'm like, dude, because I kind of picked on Oak Island a little bit in a comment.
Yeah. Yeah. I recall earlier.
He was saying, it's not that, it's ratings, right? You've got to do weird stuff to get ratings, and nobody really cares about pure documentaries anymore. They care more about how do we get people to watch over and over and over again. So
yeah, all players go murder hobo the first time. Once they really grok what's going on. Oh yeah, you mean I can do anything? Anything? I mean, like anything?
yeah, it is what it is. And honestly, somebody just commented that they prefer lectures, versus documentaries. And I think there's something to that, right? You get a good lecture, and you can kind of take the place of a documentary.
Yeah.
But part of the problem is, and this is sort of a social media trend in general, is I can go out and talk about like I love to pick on the UAP guys just because it's so easy. But the UAP UFO
Come on,
guys,
Tim, I like aliens. Can I keep some aliens?
I
They gotta be there, right? The math
okay.
says it.
Let me put on my physics
They're
hat.
here. Okay, good.
They exist in the universe. They exist. I'm 100% certain they exist. They are not living under the oceans. Maybe squid or octopus.
They count. They count. Darn it.
They are not. The moon is not hollow.
Oh, come on! I love that one. It rings like a bell when you land on it.
They didn't build the pyramids. So, but the moment you come out and say that stuff and prove it, right? And the pyramids are the one I'm still not quite sure exactly how they did, but there's been people like, oh yeah, they did this, they did that, and I'm like, it kind of makes sense, right? But
yeah. I love making fun. And again, like I mentioned before the show, is that I'm a conspiracy theorist. So like following you on Twitter is like a perpetual wet blanket. It's like, oh man.
I know.
Oh man, I love that. That was my pet theory, and he just killed it off.
But what gets me is those guys will have 2 million, 3 million followers, and you come out and like, okay, here's the real deal, right? And everybody's like, oh, okay. It's not nearly as much fun, right? So it doesn't get nearly the following. So those guys are up, selling books left and right, and grifting left and right, and doing whatever they have to do. And I get it. But they're not the people that come out and say, oh, they're wrong, and here's the 12 reasons why, man, those guys don't get the play. So and Ken Burns still cranks out some good stuff, but Ken Burns does not get seen as often as he did, right? Because PBS has kind of gone away, and you really got to go dig for him. And there are some people out there that do great stuff, but there's also, for every one of those, there's 5 hunting Hitlers, right?
Right. Yeah. Where else can we find that? Well, he's still alive and living in Argentina with a robot body.
I will almost get okay. I'm a big World War II buff, right? So I read a bunch of that stuff, and I will give you 2 conspiracy theories that I will absolutely give you points on.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
One, a lot more people knew what was going on with Kennedy than have ever seen the light of day. Right? There's way more to that one than we have ever been told.
I'm gonna be quiet. Keep going.
I'm gonna just the Kennedy one. The reason that came out was I talked to the guy who. For anybody who doesn't know, my PhD is in physics. I worked at various places over the years. I spent a decade working with MIT at the Institute for Cellular Nanotechnologies and plasma physics and in general stuff.
For those in the audience who don't know the words he's using, that's a lot of ways to say CIA asset.
I never worked for them.
That you admit.
Nobody ever does. But I did spend some time in Lincoln Labs off of it. The point is, I met so when you work there, when you work at a place like that, you meet Nobel laureates. They're everywhere, right? There's like 9 of them in the Department of Physics alone up there.
Okay.
And they kind of just show up and they're sort of around. 2 things about Nobel, and before I kind of get off on that topic, I'm going to give you points on give your audience something that I don't think I've ever talked about publicly. I have asked now 13 Nobel laureates the following question. And they've all instantly come up with the same answer, and I didn't have to explain the question to them. On the show Pinky and the Brain, who was the genius and who was insane? They all instantly go to Pinky is the genius. Not because he shows any overt signs of intelligence, but Brain's clearly nuts. Right? So,
Right. It's not that Pinky's smart. Brain is so crazy. He clearly takes that trophy.
he wins that one, right? So, yeah, all of them were like, oh, Pinky. But that included the Hungarian who was like 90. He goes, Pinky. Yeah, I met like 13 of them. So one of the ones I met was a guy who won the prize for the atomic clock. And he actually was involved with the Warren Commission, trying to prove or disprove the recordings, like was there one shooter or two? And what they had was all the acoustics, and they went and reran a bunch of stuff and said, okay, with the equipment they had available at that day, could you tell was this one shooter or two shooters based on all the audio recordings of the cops on their systems, right? Because the cops had audio recordings of the entire event. And he's like, from those audio recordings, he's like, I can't prove there was two shooters, but I can't disprove there was two shooters. And that was all he would tell me. And I was like, son of a biscuit. Come on, man. Like, you're the measurement guy. This is what you do, you know.
It's a quantum superposition of assassination. He was if there were simultaneously two shooters and no shooters.
I don't know. But it was one of those moments of because here's a guy who makes precision measurements for a living. He's like 90-10. I was like, I was like 99.1, 99.91. He was like 90-10. He's like, here's the problem. You can't. And he looked at me and I said something I'll never forget. He's like, you can never disprove a conspiracy theory. I was like, he's like, I won't stop you from looking into it. I'm like, you're making it worse, man. So, yeah. Anyway, so Kennedy's one, and honestly, there's a few others floating around, but Kennedy's the big one for me. That if you you look at the conspiracy theories, I'm like, yeah, there's something there. And the other one is Hitler. Could he have gotten to Argentina? He could. There's 20 different routes he could have done it, because a lot of those guys did, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they were picking him up for years now. A ton of his personal effects were found in Argentina. So his personal gear made it there. And why would they ship his personal stuff if they weren't going to ship him?
Right, right.
Given the health he was in, would he have lasted more than 2 or 3 years? Probably not.
Yeah, I don't know about all that, but you know, hey,
the other part was, if you look at the documentation, there were like 7 countries that had legit efforts to go try to find him 2 years after the war ended. Right? And not like, oh, let's go do some paperwork. They had legit teams in the field looking for this guy.
Operation High Jump being one of the more widely known ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So like money was being spent, right?
Yeah.
Like real money was being spent trying to look for him. So you would not be difficult to convince me the dude made it down there, right? Does it matter today?
Right. Yeah. Well, we hope it doesn't matter today. We hope. Who knows what the butterfly effect has to say on that one?
Sure. But the other thing I will tell you about World War II, if you're a history buff, that most people are not going to like me for, but I'm going to say it anyway. It is the most overused analogy in modern politics, because if you start using it for every situation, you clearly haven't read too much stuff about World War II. I did the numbers one day, like 3% of the global population was under arms at one point in time, like in uniform. It was like some massive number.
Yeah. What's happening now really does not compare.
Not remotely close, right?
And honestly, even whichever side of the aisle you're criticizing.
Yeah. And I've seen every president since probably Obama forward, every president has been called Hitler at least 20 times a day.
Right. And what's that silly rule for the longer any online discussion goes, the greater the likelihood that someone's going to get called Hitler. So that So Scotty Wayne here says, Jack being the emperor of the moon, I should tell him what it's made of. And that is true. I have been the emperor of the moon. I was declared the emperor of the moon back around circa 91, 92.
Nice.
And I can promise you that my claim is as legitimate as Emperor Norton's claim on America. So, and just as legitimate, just as much political power, and just so the U.S. government knows, I am tracking back rent for that freaking flag you left up there and that rover. You're leaving crap all over my moon, and I want the rents. I'm the landlord here.
So I actually had a chance to meet a couple of the guys that went and landed. And one of the guys who was a commander that got to just circle and wait for the two guys to come back. And I asked all of them the same thing. 'Cause when I meet people, I try not to ask like the routine stuff. It's like, you meet an Apollo astronaut, and there's not too many of them left alive. But if you meet one and you ask them, oh, what was it like? They've been asked that so many times. Just go Google it, right? Just go find it.
Yeah.
I always try to come up with like a question they've never been asked before. And so I got the chance to ask a couple of the Apollo guys over the years. Like, so they came to you early days of the space program. You're a test pilot, and you want to fly anything that you can test pilot. You're like, yeah, this is cool. I get that part. I have a question. At the time, they were using Redstone rockets to send you guys up. They were taking the warhead off and putting you guys on. This was like Gemini, and Mercury.
Right. Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, it was just Redstone rockets. I'm like, at the time, 1 in 4 of those blew up on the launch pad just sort of spontaneously. And you looked at this and said, sign me up. Like, dude, seriously, what? And one of them stopped. A couple of them were like, well, that's not really how they put it.
Right. Yeah. I recognize that's what the math is, but that's not how they sold it to us.
Yeah. And one of them stopped and was like, okay, you have to understand. He's like, I asked that same question. I think he was like it was Alan Bean. He was like, I asked that same question. And they stopped and said, the ones we put you guys on, we treat much differently, right? So the ones they were putting humans on, they would X-ray every square inch and look for faults and fix things. I mean, they were very carefully handled versus the ones you put a warhead on, right? So
right, yeah.
I was like, okay, well that makes more sense because 1 in 4 on the launch pad just spontaneously exploded. It just
well, throw me up there. We all know the D4, and it's the most painful of all the dice. So.
Yeah, and the most unforgiving one too.
The most unforgiving.
But yeah, it was one of those moments where I'm like, okay, thank you. This clears a lot up. Because it certainly is not what I would have thought, but sure.
Like 2 Rangers on the corpse of a hyena, man. There was a second shooter on the grassy knoll.
I actually live not too far from there, so I've been down there quite often. And people who say that shot was impossible from the book repository haven't looked at it. It's not that hard. And there very clearly could have been a second shooter on the grassy knoll. I mean,
who knows? And again, like the not only don't we know the entire truth, we're never going to know it. I think like the things we would need to know the entire truth have just disappeared.
Oh, the documents have been destroyed. And,
yeah, right. Yeah, it's yeah. I'm sure it's all wrapped up with MK Ultra somehow.
Well, sure. I mean, anytime you give an LSD to people on purpose.
So the universe is flat, and Laxmir says, well, how thick is it, Cyrus? And Cyrus says, not short. Now, the universe, I have heard brain theory. According to brain theory, the universe is, in fact, flat. It's a 2-dimensional membrane of which our 3-dimensional universe that we inhabit is a hologram. Have you heard of brain theory? Or is this another one of those physics fever dreams that I read in Scientific American at some point?
I'm sure somebody got that published somewhere along the lines, but
so I'm like, it's kind of like, it's interesting because they're saying, hey, you don't need all this stuff like that.
I mean, let's run it down the list of possible versus probable, right? Is it possible? Sure. Right? Is it probable? No. It's just not. So,
it's just like a lottery ticket. Am I going to win it? Possible.
But
will I? Yeah, probably not.
Yeah. Bubble theory is the correct universe. Possible. Hydrogen 3, H3. Are you talking helium 3 or H3? There's a difference.
H3. I would guess helium 3.
That would be my guess too.
That's what I would guess.
So H3, when you talk to a physicist and you get into those weird isotopes, that actually makes a difference, right? Because
it does.
You get hydrogen, deuterium, tritium. You get all these different ones that kind of pop in there on occasion. They're all still hydrogen. They're just different isotopes, right?
Yes.
And you have helium and helium-3 and all this other stuff. And helium-3 is a very special one because I spent a couple of years of my career looking for ways to make that in the lab. And you can, but you got to have a nuclear reaction. It's easy to do, but you want to have it done at lower power. So anyway, big, long nuclear reaction theory stuff.
Well, and one of the more sketchy news items I've heard in more recent years is that there are native helium-3 supplies on the moon.
There are. It's okay. It all depends on how you look at it. It's in greater. So we have an atmosphere between us and this nice nuclear reactor in the sky, right? It's up there. This nice G2 spectral class star that's out there that warms us every day. We have a nice atmosphere and magnetosphere and all kinds of stuff around us that kind of protect us from particles that come in. Does helium-3 wind up on the moon with a greater frequency than it winds up here? Yes. Is it you can just walk along and find a bunch of it? No. You actually have to pull it out. It's different. It's in greater supply there than it is here, but the supply here is so small that's not difficult.
Right. And it sounds like the way you described it, it's much more akin to, that place has way more glitter sprayed across it. We sprinkled a lot more glitter on it, but good luck gathering that glitter up and doing anything useful with it.
Yeah, it's like, I forget the numbers, but helium-3 is like such a vanishingly, I'm looking it up now, it's like 10 to the minus 8. I mean, it's some shockingly small part of helium. It's tiny.
Right.
So that's a good question. Somebody asked, do you think nuclear is making a comeback? And so the small modular reactors have been a concept for a long time. And if people aren't familiar with those, what SMRs is a nuclear reactor you never have to refuel. It's small enough to fit on the back of like an 18-wheeler truck, give or take, depending on the design you're looking at. You bury it someplace, you forget about it, you let it produce power until it runs out of energy. And then you come plop another one down in the neighborhood and let it power the neighborhood for however long it takes. They're incredibly safe because even if it had a runaway reaction, it's surrounded by enough stuff. And this is a term that sounds scary, but it's not. The stuff that surrounds it melts down. We've all heard that term. And encapsulates what goes on inside the reaction forever, right? So
correct.
When there's not enough stuff to really burn through it. So,
and from what I've heard, they even have fail-safe mechanisms where you get the reaction by moving the isotopes close to one another, and then there's a counterweight that holds them together, and that will melt once you hit the breakdown point. And as long as gravity continues to function, the weights will pull the isotopes away from one another.
So so those work. The trouble is nobody wants them in their backyard, right? And the Navy's been using decent-sized reactors and putting them on boats for a long time. So it's like and they move them around, and they don't really have any problems anymore. So there's a hydrogen fuel cell question, Cyrus. And Cyrus, you've been a follower of mine for a long time, so I always like to try to get to your questions. I looked at hydrogen fuel cells very carefully when I was a grad student for a lot of different reasons, because I actually wanted them to work. And they do. They work. They work wonderfully.
Yeah.
If you order a liter of hydrogen today, where you're getting it from is almost without fail pulling hydrogens off of natural gas. So you're basically burning natural gas to get the hydrogen. You still pollute just like you would have before.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Because to get hydrogen out of water, to dissociate the water,
a huge amount of electrolysis, doesn't it?
It takes more energy than you get out of the two hydrogens in the fuel cell. So
by recombining them back into the water and electricity.
Yeah. So if you want hydrogen fuel cells work, the trouble is you get it from fossil fuels. The only way it would work if you wanted to use water for it is to have a nuclear reactor behind the scenes doing the reaction to split apart the water, and in which case, okay, sure. Mm-hmm. But they're there. The Navy uses them for a couple of things. I think the Ohio class boats use them.
Yeah,
Like
well, from what you were just saying, we're in a similar kind of technical problem like we have with fusion. It's that we can do it. It just takes we have to put more energy into it than we get out of it, so it's not a net positive. It's not an
yeah,
energy producer.
that's the problem. And we're getting closer on fusion. And there was an article that said, "Oh, look, we broke even." And what that means was scientific break even. And for anybody who has a question, let me explain what that means. Scientific break even is how much energy did you put into the sample that you got fusion out of, and how much energy came out of that sample, not all the equipment around it. Okay. Engineering
Right,
break even and scientific break even are worlds apart from each other.
right.
But up until 5, 6 years ago, scientific break even wasn't possible. So they're finally at scientific break even. And the next step is engineering break even. And then the next step is make it commercially viable, which is still, they've been saying 20 years away for 20 years. So,
But yeah, it's. I follow a YouTuber named Isaac Arthur. I don't know if you're familiar with his stuff. He's got a great show about science and futurism,
yeah.
but that's one of his repeated quips he uses is fusion is the technology of 20 years in the future and always has been.
It has been for a very long time.
Hey, I'm old enough to remember the cold fusion debacle.
Actually, I met the guys, they worked at MIT. I met the guys who disproved that. And you know what they were actually measuring? So when cold fusion happened, they were like, "Oh, look, we found neutrons, right? We saw neutron radiation that it must be coming from our reaction."
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out that a lot of concrete uses a small amount of clay.
No way.
Clay has a small amount of uranium, and they were taking the measurement in a gigantic freaking building. So they kind of measured neutrons from the building.
Wow, that is funny. Hey,
So
Jeremy
glasses for
Herndon, glad you could make it, man. Glad to have you here. But I wanted to hit this question: why is glass susceptible to heat shock, but ceramics tend not to be?
glass has a little bit different surface tension to it than what ceramics tend to. Ceramics are a completely different world when it comes to surface tension problems. And they just bond differently. It's like you take, I don't have, I'm not a girl, so I don't have diamonds. But if you take diamonds, everybody's like, "Oh, it's the strongest thing ever," right? It's the C3 bond, this carbon 3 bond that kind of bonds together and you get all
Right.
this stuff. Carbon nanotubes are the same carbon,
Mm-hmm.
but they're 40 times harder. They're 100 times stronger than steel. It's still carbon, but it's a C2 bond versus a C3 or 4 bond. I forget which one for diamonds. It's a different bond mechanism. So you have to get down in the weeds and seeing how how the stuff in there is really bound together to see how it's going to react to heat. Because one of the projects I did for a long time, and I'll get to 0 point energy, or I'll try to anyway. 0 point
Oh,
energy.
those light, fun
Um,
subjects like 0 point energy. Yeah.
yeah. But one of the big problems when you look at those how those things bond is it can change the strength of it incredibly. So you have to be really careful because like when I was working in one of my projects, uh, it we were looking at how to build better ballistic materials because you remember the war on terror when they're trying to put armor on Humvees. Humvee was never in the million years designed to have armor on it. It just
Right.
wasn't. So here we go. Let's put 8,000 more pounds on it and see what happens, right? And it doesn't work, right? So you have to make lighter and lighter and lighter armor. The trouble is, the energy has to go somewhere, right? So you hit you hit it with energy. How are you going to make it lighter and still be able to stop that energy, right? So you have to come
Reflex
up with,
armor, baby.
yeah. I mean, you got all kinds of different ways to try it, but it gets really down to the nitty gritty of exactly what kind of material and what kind of bond am I going to have inside that material that allows me to have more energy bound up in those intermolecular bonds or interatomic bonds that
Then the
form of the
ballistic
molecule
can
or
deliver.
anything
Wow.
else, right? And sometimes you want to do things with certain layers, like, and this is old tech. I'm not giving away any secrets here. You can find this one on Wikipedia.
The
Bullet comes
Russians
in.
already know it.
Yeah, Russians already know it. Bullet comes in. You have multi-layer in armor. The first layer, you want to flip the bullet up. So instead of trying to stop that, you're trying to stop that, right?
Yeah.
You have more surface area. So that first layer does different tricks and to try to stop it. 0 point energy is a goofball quantum mechanics thing that everybody loves to try to quote now as, well, we'll just go to 0 point energy.
It's
The
magic.
trouble is, it's quantum mechanics. there are 4 people on planet Earth that truly understand the stuff, and most of those people will be like, I don't get it. It just
Right.
um,
Yeah.
so I've talked to people who are quantum mechanics, absolute world-renowned experts, and even they will tell you, look, the math works. We get the answer, but we don't know why it's the answer. It just sort of is. So, and the trouble is, you really kind of need to know why it's the answer instead of not. And zero point energy is a well-established sort of quantum theoretical property. It's not just an idea, or theory. It really is sort of a property. The trouble is, we don't understand stuff down at the quantum realm enough to really kind of use it. Um,
Right.
and
Well,
quantum gets
and
into really
there's a
funky stuff.
definitive barrier we seem to hit just in terms of measurement. I like you just can't quantify something past a certain level, past a certain small size, get past that Planck, whether we're talking time, distance, or mass, or whatever the actual measurement is, we just can't break down into smaller units.
Yeah, and when you get down small enough, things get really fuzzy. And when things get fuzzy, even Einstein was like, "This can't be right." Yeah, so he wanted actual discrete answers instead of statistically and probably this will occur. Well, it kind of
Right.
fits, but
Right, which and furthermore, all the other quotes to go with it, the spooky action at a distance, and
spooky accident distance. And you're right,
like,
reactive armor on a Humvee would be a bad idea for the crew.
and
And,
Kender, can't forget how Kender are involved. Dark matter, dark matter is everything that has been stolen. Pardon me, borrowed by Kender.
I will say this about Kender, and they are half the reason I actually ever read Dragonlance books was Tasselhoff Perfect. I love Tasselhoff, right? And
Yeah.
Kender get a bad rap because people play them badly. Okay. Margaret
Yes.
Weiss let the secret out of the bag on how she plays Kender when she plays. And that's Margaret Weiss, the expert on Kender, if there ever is one, except for maybe Tracy Hickman. But Margaret was the one talking, so we're gonna let her go. When she plays a Kender, she tells the DM, okay, take one thing out of everyone's bag and put it in mine, but don't tell me or them what it is.
That's brilliant.
Now,
Yeah, that
that's
I
how,
would have never thought of that in a million years.
because they're not supposed to be just little kleptomaniac weirdos. They're supposed to be just sort of toddler-like and forgetful, right? So it's sort of the genius way to play them is to like take something out of everyone's bag, put it in the Kenders, and when you need it,
What did you steal? I
oh,
don't know. I
shoot.
didn't steal nothing.
That way the player actually doesn't know, right? So
Right. Yeah.
Delver hates them, by the way. He will axe murder you if you can bring up Kender. He does not. So,
I have to confess I'm not a terribly big fan of Kender myself, but
but I think it's because people play him wrong. If you played it properly, I think they'd get more love. So,
well, I guess isn't that the thing? It's such a common criticism in the role playing circles that hey, nobody can get into the proper mindset to really play an elf or a dwarf because they're just too alien and we can't figure it out. Well,
yeah.
you know. But now
All
we've
right.
got a shortcut to simulate Kender appropriately, and I like it.
So there's a question about AI. So, okay. I work with AI and I have for decades because for a very long time, physicists were the only ones with big enough computers to really run the stuff. And now that cloud computing is a thing, everybody gets to play. And what drives me crazy about AI and the discussion online, and I'm not directing this at anyone, and please don't think I am. This is a general problem. Okay.
Mhm.
People have a tendency to say, oh, look, Grok can't draw pictures and large language models make stuff up and lie to us, right? Okay. But what they're trying to do is solve a problem for everyone, everywhere, all the time. Okay. AI and large language models, in a general sense, are still in their infancy and they're not there yet. But think of where they were 2 years ago. And I'm not saying they're the right answer yet, but think of where they were 2 years ago. It's the world different. But
Yes.
AI, like the way I work with it, and this goes into like my company, the O4A, we have very specifically tailored AIs to solve very specific problems, not a general problem, but a narrow problem. It
Yes,
does
it's the
wonderful things on narrow problems.
yeah, we're great at actually artificial specific intelligence, but not the AGI, the
General
general
intelligence.
intelligence,
So and to complain about LLMs or art generation is to say, hey, look, I'm going to go in the grocery store and I'm only going to go in the canned vegetable aisle and I'm going to complain about everything that's here. But you didn't look at the rest of the grocery store, right? There's a
Right.
lot more
Right.
stuff there. So I'm not saying anybody's at fault for it. I think everybody, you only see what you see, and I work in it, and other people that work in it are have to say the same stuff, and it is a little bit different. Now, the area of AI I work in is an area called predictive analytics, and what that means in English is you take a very large data set, and you look at where it's been, and you look at all the influences on it, and you try to make a couple of statistical guesses and get better and better at saying, here's where the data is going to go, right?
Right.
And it's a much different world than like large language models and trying to draw pictures and all that stuff. So,
Right. And again, I know the large language models is a very specific implementation, but we've had extremely sophisticated machine learning algorithms for a long time
yeah.
that can, make actually, from what I've heard, kind of shocking and scary predictions about people's potential buying habits of,
Oh,
you're going to buy a green shirt on the third Thursday in November,
that
right? Or
stuff.
something
I,
like
I
that.
actually did a project a couple of years ago where you can get a data set from Experian that has purchases down to the city block level. It anonymized it, so I don't know what you bought, or I don't know what your neighbor bought, but I know what people on that block bought.
Right.
And if you think about it, people on the same block tend to cluster into groups that are sort of similar types of
Yeah,
people.
they're very similar. There'll be similar socioeconomic strata, pay rates,
All kinds of stuff, right?
and they'll influence one another. Somebody on the block gets a new car, everybody else on the block is going to start thinking about a new car.
Right. One person gets a Mercedes, I might get a BMW, whatever the answer is. I drive a Jeep Wrangler if anybody's curious. And
Maserati.
I tell my kids you can have my Jeep when you try it from my cold dead fingers. But I did this project a couple years ago for his company, and with that data, I could just about tell you what the people on any given city block do for a living. I mean, it comes dangerously close. And if you go one step further, you can almost tell which way they're going to vote based on their purchasing patterns. I mean, it's crazy what you can get from
Yes.
data sets you can just go out and buy.
I
Right?
would
It's
furthermore
insane.
venture that sort of data and those conclusions are not new. We've been able to do that since the 70s,
We have,
possibly earlier. Yeah.
but it's not been available to the general public in the same sense
Right.
that
Yeah.
it is
It's
today.
sort of like, that all the companies are selling in our data and shifting around behind the scenes, but all of that was happening. They were building comprehensive, consumer profiles on us long before the internet was ever a
Oh,
thing,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. It just I
Back
couldn't
when it
go out
was
and
punch
calculate it
cards
in
and
minutes.
mainframes.
Yeah, I couldn't go out and calculate it in a few minutes the way I can today. Uh, it's a much different world. And if people want to see what I'm talking about, let's see if I can pull something up that actually shows you what I'm talking about first, like a specific use case.
We're breaking a scandal here. Michael Dale tells us that the Delver secretly loves Kender. He's just jealous that he can't play one properly.
Oh, I dare you to tell him. Uh,
Here
I'll
we
tell him.
are. All right, what
So
are we
this
looking at
is
here, Tim?
this is my company. I built this product. This is the one for all social media platform. It lets you
That was
create.
on my list of things to talk about.
Yeah, it lets you get analytics on your different social media accounts. It lets you look at how your accounts are performing, does all kinds of stuff. Lets you schedule posts out in the future. But let's talk about specific use cases for artificial intelligence. And this is kind of one of them. So let's go over to my X account. And I'm going to find a picture just because I don't feel like generating one. I'm going to find one that I actually took. So this is going to take a second. Because I have tons of them on my computer. I just never remember where the heck I store any of them.
I'm glad to hear that's not just a me problem.
Oh, it's not. So here's a couple of use cases for AI that you probably didn't think of. So this is a painting that's hanging over my piano. It's oil painting from Fantasia. This is one of my favorite pieces of art in my house, and my favorite bit of animation next to Jessica Rabbit. Because who doesn't like Jessica Rabbit?
Impeccable taste, sir.
And I'm not married, and
me for mentioning Jessica Rabbit.
I'm not married. And I don't have a girlfriend, so I can say that kind of stuff. But here's a case of it. So like this little auto hashtag button here, what this does is it reads your post and it goes through and runs a predictive analytic based on trends on the different social platforms right now. Okay. So it goes and often reads my post and says, hey, what's trending on the different social platforms? It's thinking for a second. So it'll come up with suggestions on different hashtags to use to get you the most views. So how do you get the most engagement, most views, find the right audience? And if you'll notice, there's a few things on it, like artistic, right? So artistic is nowhere in this post. It's smart enough to go, hey, look, that one's actually kind of useful on one of the platforms. Might want to use that.
Right. The best performing posts of similar content and pictures use that hashtag.
Right. And what this is doing is it's not saying, hey, look, this is the best one for, a lot of other platforms will do things like, hey, 12,000 people are using this hashtag, go use it. Now, what we're doing is looking at how many people are viewing those hashtags per hour and how many are going to view them in the next couple of hours. So we're trying to predict.
So again, it's equal parts analytic, but also predictive.
Right. But also notice it's pulling up some stuff that even, though it's a decent AI, yeah, I'm not going to hashtag home here because it's a piece of art I'm talking about. Right? So it still pulled that up. and this is the point to AI. It's a tool. It's not a replacement for a human. And Dungeon Delver said it best. You can see like there, boom, it sends it over there. And here's another use of AI. You can actually use AI to analyze the image and look for types of hashtags.
Right, yeah. Image, right? So I got to admit, I'm surprised it didn't recognize that Mickey picture, but
it will not let you. Disney will see.
Oh, right. So it does recognize it. It's just refusing to speak.
Right. So you can schedule the post off in the future. You can post it now. I'm just going to post it now and send it to both Instagram and X. And that's, kind of how it works. But what that does is that turns your volume up on finding the correct audience. So like a typical Twitter engagement rate for a decent sized account will be like 1%, 2%, something like that.
Okay.
Mine runs like 7.5 to 10 on the engagement rate on a regular basis.
Okay.
And the higher the engagement, the faster you grow, the more you find the right audience, all that kind of stuff.
The more engagement you have, stuff like that. So I'm so glad you went that direction because that's definitely one of the main things. Part of this journey for me is I released a book of my own several years back, and it was a gigantic flop because I had no social media presence with which to promote it. It was just I wrote a book, threw it on out there, and even what do you call it? Pigeon, riding the coattails of another author. Just got no real response or purchase, right? So in the years since, I said, I really got to learn how to do this social media thing, which led me to X and then eventually doing this show, which is one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you. So how did you even get into this in the first place, this business?
So I built the social media platform so that authors have an affordable thing to go use, because when I started it, I write books too, right? So, and trying to build a marketing platform when you're an indie author is difficult.
Yes.
And so I wanted an easy way to do it because I didn't really want to have to go off and figure out how to build a social platform. So I cheated. I built a company that does that. And as a result, I wound up with 12,000 Twitter followers and 12,000 something on YouTube and 20 something thousand on Instagram. It just, all over. But, and one of my books has sold 11,000 copies, I think. I've got another one that's up over 6,000. All in as an indie author, I'm up over 21,000.
In all total, okay.
And if you're familiar with Kindle Unlimited, I'm like at 4.3 million or something pages read.
Right. That's a lot of page reads. I was part of KDP for a very, very short while, but nothing, of course, like to that kind of response. Yeah. So, it helped me build that audience, but even, I wrote a sci-fi book that I think has sold 12 copies, right? So I'd love it if it did better.
but not every book is going to do that. It's partially based on audience, partially based on who's going to actually pick up and read. Who's you go down the list of sort of what's available versus out there. And
Not to be a doomer, but do you see literacy levels, like the sheer number of people that read for fun or otherwise, is just kind of going down?
it is, but also
per capita.
It is, and this gets a little inside baseball, but I tried to find a publisher myself because they were like, oh, if you sold 5,000 copies, we'll put out your next one. Okay, great, I've done 10. Well, if you sold 15,000, like, it's
Right, yeah. Oh, that's a nice goalpost. Let me move that for you.
Yeah, it's a shame if something happened to it. So I kind of gave up on that a while ago, but it depends. So if you look at publishing houses in general, 80 some odd percent of their sales come from back catalog, right? So if you're writing in a field, take fantasy, for instance, you're going to have to compete with Tolkien, Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance. You go down the list of big names that people claim.
Porgy, yeah,
Yeah, and there's people who claim, although not all of them do, oh, I reread, the entire 5-part series of,
I'm on my 7th reread of the Wheel of Time. No, you're not.
Right. It's like one day I posted a picture of my first edition of Hunt for Red October, of which there's like 11,000 copies, and it had 250,000 impressions and hundreds of people claiming they had a first edition. I'm like,
I believe think it's a first edition.
You might think it is. Just because it's hardcover doesn't mean it's a first edition.
Right.
But it, and honestly, I only have one because it was my dad's, and my dad passed away. So, I guess it doesn't work out. I really have my dad, but still, it is what it is. So but most of their sales come from their back catalog, and so you got to compete with that, right? And you look at the thing where people read that back catalog, and if you're in that field, you're like, okay, this is a problem, right? So like my sci-fi, people love the back catalog of sci-fi. 60s and 70s had some amazing sci-fi in there that's tough to compete with because there's a crap ton of it.
Yeah.
And the books I've had that have done really well are more action, military thriller, techno thriller kind of thing. But those get dated very quickly. Like not many people are going to go back and reread Tom Clancy because it was very specific to the 80s or 90s when it came out.
I did not consider that. Yeah. So they're, by their very nature, they're not the same sort of timeless stories that either sci-fi or fantasy can be, because they're not so directly connected to our world. Like,
right. And also, so one of the bigger ones for sales right now, and tends to kind of hold steady, is historic fiction, but it has to be very specific. If you're going to write historic fiction, you're ready to do a crap ton of research, because there are people out there that are like, and I've done 2 of them. And one of them is my best-selling book. It sold 10,000 plus copies, book called Forced of Assassins. It's about Navy SEALs set in Vietnam.
Yes, I was actually just looking at the description for that today.
Yeah. So it was before we admitted we had Navy SEALs and before we admitted we were in Vietnam is when it's set. Funny story about that book. I'm going to out myself on something. It has the Gulf of Tonkin event in the book.
Okay.
Right. And at the time, I still worked at a defense contractor, and I still
totally
had
legit thing there.
Totally legit. Right?
Yeah, totally legit.
And I went in for my security review, and the guy looks at me and goes, you can't just release stuff about Gulf of Tonkin without asking. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've never had any access to that file. And they're like,
no kidding.
Quickly change the subject. So I'm close. I'm really close to something. That book sold 10,000 plus copies now or something. It's done really well.
Vietnam is one of the more popular, for military historians, it's one of the more popular conflicts because it was so brutal and terrible, but also so close. We have so many people still with us that lived through that.
And that book it's got like over 1,000 reviews on Amazon now, and I want to say it's 4.1, 4.2 stars. But yeah, I'm looking it up. It's sold 12,200 copies for a purely indie book, right? That's a lot.
That's great. Well, and it goes to show that you never know exactly what niche is going to be popular, and like you said, that's a very niche thing. But if you had not written in such a specific time period and with such a specific focus, it wouldn't be as compelling of a story, would it?
It wouldn't, but the trouble with it is people who read historic fiction are what I like to call rivet counters, right? So I have a friend who writes historic fiction about the Cold War. And if
Uh,
you dare say, well, the wing of this aircraft has 40 rivets and it's really 41, there will be somebody out there that calls you out on it and leaves like a 1-star review because you didn't know the number of rivets that went on.
yes, yeah. That's the kind of, and really, that's what made or breaks the book for you. There's a degree to which I get it. I get it. If you're wrong about that, how can I trust anything else you say? But again, is it a real bad one? And now,
Yeah. I mean,
my buddy Dan here, DMG Photography Studio. AI narrators are horrible as they don't know correct pronunciation of a lot of words. And I've listened to his videos where he's used an AI narrator, and yes, they are terrible.
some of them are, but I actually have listened to some audiobooks where the human narrator kind of sucked too. So it's like
also true. And again, it's one of the, like you just intimated a little while ago, is like, well, give it a year or two. We may not be able to compete with AI narrators in a year or two, given the degree of advancement we've seen in that field.
it's moving so fast.
Right. And yeah, I kind of feel like the AI thing right now is sort of like leaning into the internet in the late 90s. Yeah, we had the .com bubble burst shortly after that, but it's not like the internet went away.
Yeah, and it's like I see this all the time where people are like, oh, well, we shouldn't use it. It shouldn't be a thing. I'm like, okay, yeah, and Wikipedia is going to go away also, right? I mean, that's not going to change, right? You say that all you want, but when was the last time in the history of anything that something was uninvented?
Yeah.
And before we came on, you
Roman
wanted
concrete.
to get into you before we came on, you were talking about Moore's law.
Yes.
Right.
Let's touch on that again.
This gets down in the weeds. And by the way, I will never give a stock tip to anybody ever because it's the best way to lose friends, and I'm not licensed to do so. So I will never give anybody a stock tip.
Stock tip number one is don't ask Tim for stock tips.
I will never give you a stock tip. I will tell you this. I know people who have taken companies public. I know people who work in the venture space. I know people who work in banking. They will tell you that 95% of the money's been made before the IPO. Take that for what it's worth. You can make money after the IPO, but the real money was made before the IPO.
Right, because that's free and clear money. Everything else is wrapped up in options and unrealized gains and stuff like that.
Yeah, so
having $1 million in stock is not the same as having $1 million.
It's not, because that could change quickly. It's like, oh, my home is worth. Okay, it's worth what somebody's willing to pay. But what you call it? So Moore's law. When I was coming up in computers, my dad was a software engineer from 1962 until he retired. So he was early days of computers. So I've heard of Moore's law when I was too young to drive, right? So I'm that nerd, right? That used to read PC Magazine and actually key in the utilities, like when they would come out, and like some of them were in assembly, right? So you'd actually go in and key them in and type them out. But Moore's law was a thing, and computers got faster and faster because the data pathways inside your processor got smaller and smaller and smaller, right? So Moore's law held because processing chips were getting more efficient and the data pathways shrunk because you can only move an electron so fast across a wire such a distance, right? So
right. You approach the speed of light and then that's it.
No, the drift velocity is a lot slower than the speed of light, but you shrink that space down to almost nothing. Well, I've got a MacBook Pro in front of me, right? So if you look at the data pathways inside there, you're talking 50, 60 nanometers.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little bit smaller than that. For point of reference, from electron cloud to electron cloud, a hydrogen atom is 0.1 nanometer. Right, so you're talking 600 hydrogen atoms side by side. You're not getting smaller, right? You're just not realistically getting smaller. Maybe a little, but you're not going to get past 1 nanometer, right? I mean, that's the smallest semiconductor I've ever seen is 1 nanometer.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do you hook leads to it? It just becomes problematic. So to keep Moore's law alive, we went to cloud computing, and instead of having a smaller processor, you just throw a crap ton more processors at the problem, right? So
right.
that's how Moore's law kind of survived. Was you just, instead of saying, "Oh, my processor's better," how much work is really done on your computer now versus off in the cloud someplace, right? It much more has been offloaded to the cloud, and you don't really do it here. Even a lot of like MMOs, the multiplayer massive online, whatever the hell those things are called. Even a lot of video games are now doing processing off in the cloud. They're not doing it, as some of them still are. They're doing a lot of processing on the PC, but there's something that's going off in the cloud, and that's going to trend to be more and more of that, because a lot of shit doesn't work anymore unless you're plugged in and turned and connected to Wi-Fi.
Yeah, very much so. Not a terribly big fan of that trend, but that's a separate topic, I think.
Right. So I think what you're going to start to see is more of a trend towards tablets and getting away from gaming PCs and getting away from all those other things into stuff being kind of offloaded to the cloud.
Right. So more like
on.
You have a terminal here, not an actual full computer of its own.
Yeah. Right. So, because the truly interesting stuff is all that crap off in the cloud sometimes.
Now, pursuant to this earlier, I think you had mentioned that quantum computing is now the new direction that they're going in, specifically because they can actually take on Moore's law with actual engineering and scientific principles, not these complicated workarounds that you've been describing.
Right. Well, you could do things sort of at the speed of light instead of going at the speed of drift velocity in silicon, right? Which is orders of magnitude different.
Right, because the speed that the electron can achieve moving through metal or whatever's actually inside the chip is not remotely anywhere close to the speed of light. Yeah, yeah. So I get it.
It's measured in meters per second instead of kilometers per second, right? Or hundreds.
Right, right, yeah.
5 orders of magnitude off. So yeah, it not remotely close to one of the
others. And Delver's never read a Dragonlance book. Well, if you hate Kindred, that would do it. That would do it.
I would argue he's probably read the first 6, the Chronicles and Legends, but I don't think he's probably ready. He's more of a Forgotten Realms guy.
Yeah.
It's like,
for better or worse, generally worse.
Yeah, but there's 250 Forgotten Realms novels out there, and
that's true. Yeah, of which I've read just the barest handful. But I'm the same way. Of course, when it comes to Dragonlance, I only read the original trilogy. So
the second trilogy was better. After that, they get really hit or miss.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas for some reason, I couldn't get into the second trilogy, the Twins trilogy. That's what that one was. Yeah,
Legends, I think.
Just didn't take to it.
Yeah.
One day we can chat about 14K Google Biz listings, LLMs, and mortgage industry. Well, we're kind of touching on everything tonight. R-Dubs, glad to have you here. Continue to be flamboyant, sir.
So I have my own qualms with the mortgage industry, but
tell me about that. I do too. But
real estate in general, right? So if you buy or sell a house, the number of people who have their hands in that transaction is insane, right? There's sort of 10% of it, 10-ish% goes off to somebody who's not the buyer or the seller, right? It goes off.
Yes,
right?
yeah. There's
and if you as the buyer think you're not covering those costs, you're insane, right? It's coming. So the mortgage industry, I think, how to put this? I'm going to put this in a mathematical sense. Okay. If you look back to 1970, 1980-ish, interest rates were higher. They were 18-ish%, right? 17, 18%.
Yes.
But if you looked at average home versus average income, you saw if you take the median income versus median home cost, it was something like 2 or 3x is what you saw was the median home versus the median income. It's now like 11 to 1 or something, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 to 1, depending on where you live, sometimes higher. So yeah, the interest rates are lower. You go, oh, well, look, back there, they had higher interest rates. Yeah, but your income compared to the price of the home,
right? Yeah,
was really close. And now those two are really far apart.
If your home price today was $20,000 or $30,000, you wouldn't be complaining about an 18% interest rate. You just take
the median income.
Of those.
Take the median income of like call it, I don't know, whatever it is, 60 grand, 70 grand, whatever the median
Mhm.
income is. Multiply it by 3. If the average home was $210,000, you could do it. Somebody's going to go, well, if you live over here, you could buy a home for $210,000. Yeah, if you live in Brownsville on the Mexico border, you can buy a house for that. But
Yes.
you can't necessarily do that where your job is or where it has good schools for your kids. So, the
Correct.
median home
Or
versus the median income
the
is much
perfect
different.
house at the perfect price is not available within that short span of time that you got to find one where you've, said, I'm
Right.
moving out of this current place and I'm going to be moving into a new one,
And it almost mathematically, if you look at it carefully, because rents are also very high. So if you don't own, you're renting and you're paying somebody else.
Yep.
But rents are so high now that it's difficult to save more money, and you're not going to avocado toast your way out of this.
No, you're not. No.
And the problem is, if you're not currently an owner of real estate, the odds of you becoming one are shrinking quickly. Right. So one of two things has to happen. And somebody ran the numbers. It wasn't me. I saw them the other day. It's like to get to, if you want to keep houses at this price, you got to get interest rates down to like 1.5% or something, which has never happened in the history of real estate. Right. So,
Right. Yeah.
if you really want to fix the market, housing prices have to come down. Now, somebody else is going to come at me and go, we have a look at the average home in 1980 versus now. I don't care. If you can't buy it, you can't buy it.
Right. Yeah.
And I've
It
talked
doesn't
to
matter
builders.
if it's $1 million or $1 billion. Either way, I can't afford it.
Right. So and I've talked to home builders, I'm like, why is this the case? Why aren't you guys built? Well, the margins on a bigger house are better. Right. So if you've only got 12 lots you can build on, do you want to build a house where you might get a 3-4% margin? You want to build one where you get a 30% margin? Well, you're in business.
Yep.
You're going to build a 30% margin. It's just the way it's going to go.
Yep.
And then, you're going to rent it out. Well, if you go look at like rent in certain areas, it's actually much cheaper now to rent than to buy because of the prices. Like where I live in Frisco, Texas. A starter home around here is like $900,000 or something. It's not inexpensive.
Oh, geez.
But it's a great school for my kids. Fantastic deal to get them through K through 12. Choices were made. This is where I am. So it is what it is. But if you look around here to rent versus buy, your mortgage payment is actually going to be shockingly higher than if you rented that same home. Right. So if you go look at what rental homes are going for, you can actually rent it cheaper than you can buy it, and then somebody else gets to do the maintenance. Right? So
yes.
Big delta.
Well, and that's the thing too is when I was younger and I grokked that's how it worked. I was like, well, why even bother going through all the pain of owning a place? And again, eventually I learned about equity and how it accrues over time. So that's still the thing. That's a good part of it. But the home prices, like you said, something needs to happen about that because this is our first house that we bought. We've been here about 8 years, and on paper, the value of the house has about doubled since we bought it in the last 8 years, and that's just ridiculous.
Has your income doubled in the last 8 years?
No, it has most certainly has not. As a matter of fact, it feels like it about the opposite. It's like technically I'm making the same amount of money, but it feels about half of what it was 8 years ago.
Groceries are up, gas is up, insurance is up, insurance on your house, your car, your whatever is up. Health insurance copays, or we won't even talk about what happened with those.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's costs across the board, and again, without delving too far into the economics of it, but again, Cyrus is right. Use Jack McCarthy for more action. And again, ladies, you did hear correctly. Tim is single, so if this is what you're all about, send messages to me directly. I'm screening any potential life mates for Tim. But send to me directly. Include pictures, no nude ones though. I'm not that kind of pervert. I'm a completely different kind of pervert. But we're gonna screen the ladies for Tim and set him up on some blind dates.
No.
Okay, come on, Tim.
Absolutely not.
God, you're shooting down all my aliens and conspiracy theories, and now I can't run a Tim Imholt dating site.
There's the Tim is divorced and Tim dated for a while, and Tim went, this is not worth it.
This is not working out for me. I'm not seeing the cost benefit analysis work out. I did not tell you to wear a maroon shirt for the show? Is the maroon shirt of significance?
It was not wrinkly and clean.
That's as significant as I can go. Good. And now here's the funny thing. Book of Onan was good. That's the title of the book that I wrote. It's set within a friend's fantasy universe. And the title of the book is Onin, O-N-I-N, which is the name of the character that it's about. For those who might be more up to speed on their biblical studies, you will recognize the name there as Onan, the god of self-abuse, which is referenced in certain Old Testament scriptures. As
I'm going to leave that one completely alone.
Yes. So if you look up my book and Onan with an A, you're probably going to get quite mixed internet results.
I have one that I will tell you a dating horror story if you really want one.
Well, yes. I got to hear the dating horror story. Please, Tim.
So I wrote, it wasn't really a horror story. This was a funny story. Okay. So I wrote the book I'm most proud of that I've written is one that hasn't sold nearly as well as I'd hoped it would. Is one that I just threw in the thing there. So it's this book called The Diocese Dilemma. And the idea behind the book was it's not particularly religious. It doesn't beat you over the head with one thing or another. It says, hey, if you go into confession and you're beyond absolution, what's the solution for the priest? So I went to Catholic school for a long time. My dad actually was studying to be a Catholic priest before he was my dad, obviously. Or hopefully, depending on how you look at it.
Legally.
But I grew up Catholic, right? And which makes it so that, especially when you're my dad, you studied a lot, you've read it, and I tend to read things more logically and go, there's a lot of inconsistencies here, which is not something you want when you read the Bible. You're not supposed to notice the inconsistencies in different things. You're supposed to take it on faith. I was a kid, let it go. So I wrote this book called The Diocese Dilemma, and the idea was, if you have a priest who finds people are beyond absolution, what do you do, right? So the priest in question comes from an Italian mafia family. So the answer was get him to meet St. Peter really fast, but make an eye for an eye really a good thing, right? So it's, let's make the punishment fit the crime. And I will not apologize for what I did to the child molester.
Hey, we're just delivering this soul directly to heaven.
In a way that might hurt a little bit. So
I didn't feel a thing.
Yeah, it didn't hurt the priest. But yeah, it didn't sell. But I was out one night, and my kids were with my ex-wife that week, and I don't want people to think I'm out drinking when I have kids at home. I was out drinking when my kids were with my ex-wife.
Don't worry, we all know that when it comes to kids, you do all your drinking at home. So
exactly.
You keep an eye on them
because of that. But anyway, so I was out talking to somebody, and this woman and I had a great conversation, fantastic discussion. I was like, hey, if you want to sometime, call me. I gave her my number. She actually texted me. She goes, one thing I didn't tell you is that I'm a youth pastor on the weekends. And I said, okay. I found your book, The Diocese Dilemma. I was like,
oh yeah. The little thing.
Not mentioned that. Now, the other funny part to that book was my dad, being my dad, was still very active in religion his entire life. And he had some close friends that were Catholic priests. And he used to have this weekly poker game at his house that had 2 priests and a bishop, which sounds like the opening to a joke, but it's really not. He really did have a weekly poker game with 2 priests and a bishop. The rule was you weren't allowed to talk about religion because it was their night off. So,
makes sense.
Yeah. And I used to go over and sit in on the game once in a while because I lived close enough I could do that. And I never brought it up, right? Until one night I bluffed the crap out of the bishop, and my dad was like, you were so full of crap, because my dad knew me, right? He could read my tells pretty fast because he's my dad. He turns the cards over and he's like, lie to a bishop. I was like, what? So when I wrote this book, I sent it to my dad's friends. It was like, hey, can you guys read this and make sure I have the Catholic inner workings of the church correct? Like, please don't take offense to the content matter.
Yeah,
but,
yes. Just
and all three for three emailed me back. This is great. I was like, what? Like, It's like, dude, you don't know how often people come into confessional and they confess the same stuff week after week after week after week. It's like you're supposed to actually repent for your sins and not keep redoing the crap.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's kind of
Yeah.
what one of the things I put in the book. And people who come in to confess who aren't really sorry, or come in to try to confess as like a pre-confess for a crime a sin I'm about to go do, right? Because I
Yeah.
did
Yeah. I'm having lustful thoughts. I'm going to totally bang that cashier at the drugstore.
yeah, and despite the fact that I'm married.
Yeah.
Um, so that was sort of the whole crux of the book, and the priest and the bishop were like, freaking awesome. Can we send it to a cardinal? I'm like, somebody who votes on Pope? What do you? I'm like,
Absolutely. I want you to
yeah.
send it to every cardinal.
I was like, okay. So I was hoping to get protested because I figured it would increase book sales. But the Catholics who read it, or at least the priests who read it, were like, this is freaking great. Didn't get protested. Dang it. Kind of hoping.
Well, yes. Then you have a ways to go to catch up with the likes of, whatever it was, Willem Dafoe and Kevin Smith. Who
Yeah.
got protested because of Dogma. Gates of Fire is one of my favorite books. It's a historical fiction. I am not familiar, Jeremy. I'd need to hear more. Also, The 10,000, which I've heard of, but I don't know anything about. The 10,000 is really good as well. If memory serves, that's actually a Roman centered historical fiction, but I could be wrong about that.
I've done two historic fictions. I did Force of Assassins, another one called China Bones that was set in the Pacific Theater in World War II. About a Marine who was actually held in a prison camp during part of the book. And the prison camps in Europe have nothing on the prison camps in the Pacific Theater. Concentration camps notwithstanding. The POW camps, different kind of camp.
Yes, different conditions entirely.
Yeah, I want to make sure I get that very specific. Somebody's going to come at me. I thought it was a pretty good book. It's done okay. I'm working on one now about the Battle of Leyte Island, which had the Battle of Samar and a few other things in it, which was the biggest naval battle in the history of ever. That had the Yamato and its sister ship in it. One of the two got sunk there.
Okay.
So it's literally the largest naval battle ever. And I'm kind of just kicking that one off at the moment to kind of play with. We'll see where it goes, but
yeah. Sometimes I have similar things. It's like I got a germ of an idea and I'm working at it, but a story hasn't really emerged out of it yet, and I can really see that. And one of the fascinating things about that period of history, too, the World War II naval side of things, was that apparently they tooled so much design, planning, logistics, and strategy around the eventual inevitable clash of battleships against one another, and then that just never happened.
Well, the way we figured out real fast, the way we took out their battleships was by having air superiority.
Yep.
You can't, if you go toe to toe with it, especially like the Yamato with its 18-inch guns. I mean, come on.
Right. And from what I understand, that's about the greatest utility they saw out of battleships, is actually be out in the water and then bombard the land with that heavy artillery. That's the greatest effect we saw out of them. They're not actually very good at ship-to-ship combat.
They're not. And what we figured out was if you put enough aircraft over the top of it, you could take one down by bombing the crap out of it from the top. That's how we sunk two.
Right.
It worked. Right, aircraft carriers make a difference.
Kind of makes me wonder too, and maybe you have thoughts on this, but in our current phase of history, just like air superiority was the deciding factor of World War II in the 20th century, I wonder if space superiority is what's going to be the deciding military factor of the 21st.
Space is too hard to really use as a military sense because you got to move fast, right? Like, oh, that target is here today. I got to get there right now. Right. So I think you'd have to get too quick to do it. I think the deciding, I worked in defense for a long time, and I had a chance to talk to a couple of very high ranking officers, including one who became Secretary of Defense, getting Mattis. Mattis. Yeah, a little guy.
Little guy, yeah. I've heard of him once or twice.
Yeah, he was interesting. who apparently almost punched out a president, which is why he was no longer Secretary of Defense. Which after having met him, I believe he would have.
Right.
But I asked him, I was like, what in the military technology world would keep you up at night? And he looked at me and goes, yeah, I'm the thing that keeps people up at night. I'm like, yeah.
I get that. You're a badass dude, right? Yeah. But what piece of equipment?
And he wouldn't answer it, but a couple of the generals around him would, because when you have a 3-star floating around, he was a 3-star at the time, it was before he made 4. You wind up with a 1-star and a bunch of colonels everywhere, because that's just the way it works.
Okay.
And one of the 1-stars came over and looked at me and goes, making our smart weapons stupid scares the crap out of everybody. It's like, if anybody could ever figure out how to make our smart weapons stupid, we're screwed. Because if you look at how big we are as a military, we got like 6 or 7 active duty divisions, something like that.
Yeah.
China's got like 9 on what used to be the Russian border, right? And we can take them because we have smart weapons. But if we don't have those,
our tactical superiority is right out the window.
Our force multipliers go away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think, if anything busts up the next generation, it's either going to be making our smart weapons stupid, or it's like, actually was working on a project in 2012 or so, 10 to 12, to build sensors to try to detect smuggled nuclear weapons.
Right.
And
right.
My first comment was, is that really a problem?
Right. Yeah. Like, can't you just wander around with Geiger counters? I kind of think that we've had that technology for a while.
Well, the trouble is that if you look at nuclear warheads and the delivery methods we used in the 40s and whatnot, we didn't have FedEx, and they were a lot bigger. And you can FedEx one now, right? I mean, you really could.
Right. Yeah. Actually, I can completely imagine that.
And so the question is, how do you scan every single FedEx shipment without slowing FedEx down? And then how do you multiply that out for every shipping container that comes in and out of the country?
That seems like a logistical problem.
It's a problem, right? And how do you do it without false alarms? Because the solution they had with like Geiger counters gave false alarms on kitty litter, bananas. You go down the laundry list because they all have neutron radiation.
Right. Yeah.
So
when you get right down to it, it's kind of shocking how many things are radioactive.
Yeah, well, at least in small scale. But if you look at a whole shipping container full of it, it can give off a signal that can fool you.
Right.
And then it was like 1 in 100 shipping containers had a problem. But look how many come in and out of a port any given day, right?
Right. That's 1 per minute.
Yeah,
kind of problem with.
You can't do it, right? So we were trying to build better ones. So I wrote this book called The Last World War, of what happens if somebody has 5 nuclear weapons and decides to like put them different places and just have like the world's biggest world's biggest suicide bomber.
Okay.
Times 5. And so let's play that out for a second. And this was The Last World War, Volume 1. Big orange cover you see on Amazon under my name.
Yeah. I was looking at that today too.
What happens if you put 3 of those in Israel and you knock Israel back to like the size of the New Hampshire National Guard?
Okay.
They're done, right? Our ally in the Middle East is gone. And say what you want about Israel, but when I wrote the book, whatever. They were our ally. They still are. Like, whatever side you want to sit on with the whole Gaza thing.
Yes.
I really don't care. They still count as an ally. And they put 2 in the United States, but I put 1 out at the Lockheed Martin facility because it's the only place we build military aircraft in this country anymore.
Right. 1 facility, it's a choke point, single point of failure.
Right. So if you knock that out, we have to live on what we have, and we don't have that many. We've got a couple hundred Joint Strike Fighters. We've got, I think there's less than 100 F-22s. Right? There's not a ton of those aircraft out there, and they require a lot of replacement parts that come out of that freaking factory. Right. So
remove that factory, and most of our infrastructure goes with it.
And the people who know how to build it live really close.
Right. You're right. So even worse. So it's like, so not only have we lost the facility, we've lost the people who could rebuild the facility in a timely fashion.
And if you take our air superiority out, That's a problem. And I put the other one in where we build military ground vehicles. And I said, okay, we have a lot longer spare part chain for those, but can you imagine us without air power? Right?
No.
We'd go back to boats trying to ship stuff around. I don't
Right.
think we have
Yeah.
enough. Right? So
Yeah. I mean, consider that the shipping, the detriment to shipping alone would cripple us. And it's
yeah,
like one of those things, like, people don't think, oh, it's only like a 10% dip in economy. Yeah, that's crippling.
yeah. And how do you rebuild that superiority chain? It would take decades to put that back together. So I was like, okay, that's my spot, right? And then I wrote the second part of that book, and I turned it into. It came out right before COVID and didn't do as well because I was like, okay, what happens if you have a bioweapon? And then it was released like right around the same time as the lockdown started. And
Yeah. Not a good time to be speculating about that topic online.
yeah, power grid, Cyrus. That's a really good point. I'll get to that one in a minute. DMG, you think about the space race. The other fun part about the half-assed tin can we put to the moon is you could not get to Saturn V on the launch pad today. The safety guys would never let it go. Not going to happen.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, there's just a couple problems with the way we did that. But the power grid would do it. But imagine what would happen in the United States if we knocked out all credit card and debit card transactions.
I literally couldn't buy anything. Right, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do anything. I don't have cash on hand anymore. Who keeps that?
And how fast would ATMs be empty?
Right. Yeah, they would just be gone. Those things are empty all the time as it is.
Right. So
I
don't think you even need to take out the power grid. I think just take out credit card transactions.
But Black Lodge Games, thanks for stopping by, guys. Glad to see you here.
Yeah. So anyway, there's enough. If that's one of the fun things about being a writer is you can kind of go out and say, how would I mess up the world? That's how you get a chance to actually sit down and play with that.
Is there a speed of dark? Yes, it is the inverse of the speed of light.
It's exactly the same as the speed of light.
Yeah, it's seriously.
Yeah.
And might even be faster because I think according to thought experiments, they say that, well, if the ship is moving at the speed of light, depending on your perspective, its shadow would appear to be moving greater than the speed of light, which sounds like a bunch of crap to me.
You got to be moving really, really fast for that to matter.
Yeah. Seriously.
Faster than any human has ever moved, ever.
I never read the Cleric Quintet. I wanted to because I love playing clerics, but.
All right, so since we've been talking about science, I'm going to pull one out that since you like the conspiracy theory stuff. Right?
Oh yeah, please do. I love that shit.
X-rays and light are essentially the same thing. They're just shorter wavelength.
Right.
But so are radio waves and light's the same stuff, just longer waves.
Yeah, it's all part of the same spectrum.
So if you follow the UFO and UAP stuff, you see these guys out there going, "Oh look, here's this thing going supersonic, but with no sonic boom." That's not how it works. You can't eliminate the sonic.
Yes. It's not like, look, it's going fast, it's sonic. Yeah, you're not gonna like hear it the second you see it, right? It's like movies when a nuke goes off in the distance, but you hear the explosion right away.
Yeah, that's not how it works.
That's not how that works.
If you're close enough to hear the explosion right away, you didn't hear the explosion.
Right? Yeah, you were close enough to be vaporized.
Yeah, it's like the one of the movies that I absolutely I love Indiana Jones movies. I've seen every one of them in the theater, including Dial of Destiny. I love them all, except for the one where he found the alien heads. I don't like that one very much. And it started for me the moment he stuck himself in the refrigerator and survived the nuclear test. I was like,
I was really skeptical of that movie, but painfully giving it a chance. But the nuke in the fridge and surviving that was okay. No.
I watched it all the way through and I went,
that was dumb. That was the dumbest thing I have ever seen. I am shocked that Harrison Ford agreed to do this.
Well, what's funny about that is apparently they argued for years over a script and he kept turning down scripts saying they were terrible and he agreed to that one. I want to see what he turned down.
Right? Yeah. How bad did it have to be? It was like, why do all these scripts have Indy having gay sex with people in the Middle East? I don't know why. Why is that a big thing in all these scripts?
Yeah. So, um, yeah, so I will give you my favorite rundown on RPGs. So since
Got it.
you're an RPG show, let's go through RPGs for me. Um, I fell in love with RPGs around the time Dragonlance Chronicles came out. Okay, when Dragonlance Chronicles came out, I picked up the Dragonlance modules. I know a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, they're railroady modules."
Yeah.
Fine, I don't care. I was a teenager, let it go. I still thought I could get girls to play Dungeons and Dragons in the '80s, and it wasn't true. um, it
You
You can
poor
now,
man.
but at the time not so much.
That is the one thing you might be able to learn from me.
Yeah. The
Chicks dig me.
So I brought home. I found those two books. I found those books when only two of them were on the market. So Dragons of Autumn, Twilight, and Winter Night were out, and Spring Dawning hadn't come out yet. Um, and it When I got those home, I read them in like a weekend, or at least the first one. I was like, oh my god, I just couldn't put it down. I just went to, and it was the first book I ever got that my dad was like, huh, picked it up and he goes, "Hey, that's pretty good. Let me see the second one." So it was like the first book I ever like brought home that my dad liked, right? So it was one of those moments of holy crap. And it got me really into RPGs, but it also made me sort of a lifelong reader. So if you look around my house and my Twitter feed on any given day, you'll see books fly by because I've got, at last count, about 1,300 of them. And my kids one day were trying to go through find one I hadn't read and couldn't tell them what it was about, and it took them like a dozen tries to find one. And it turned out it was just one of the ones that my dad had that I'd never read. So
Right. You inherited. That's why it didn't come through just yet.
it was like a Theodore Sturgeon book from the 50s or something. They finally got
Right.
me. But I also have a very large collection of analog magazines. And anybody who wants to read sci-fi or try to discover sci-fi writers, um, RPGs led me to read fantasy, which led me to read sci-fi, which I think led me to go become a scientist because I had a ton of questions. And I'm like, how's all that crap work?
Right.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think avid readers go into science and engineering as much as anything else. Right? People who read a lot tend to go into those types of fields. And I always read a ton. I still to this day have a book with me everywhere I go.
Yeah.
Not all nonfiction. And one of the things that also drove me nuts in the dating world when I got divorced was like you meet people, oh, I'm an avid reader, and you go in their house, there's like 200 self-help books. I'm like, that's not.
Yeah. Self-help books and Harlequin
Um,
romance.
yeah, no, not even that. I would have been happy
That would have been
that.
a step up.
Yeah. Anyway, it
Darn it, Tim, I like self-help books too. Now I can't have conspiracy theories
they're
or
okay. If
or
what
aliens or
I get reading a couple of them, right? But when you have hundreds of them and the spines have clearly never been opened, you're
okay,
not
yeah,
an
I'll
avid reader.
concede the point there.
So, but if you want to learn sci-fi, if you really want to get into sci-fi and you don't want to say, oh, these books are too long, this is too, and you just want to kind of understand authors, go to ABE Books or Half Price Books on the web on the web.
Mhm.
I think it's hpb.com, halfpricebooks.com.
Yeah.
Or Google Half Price Books. Order a couple of old analog magazines from the 60s and 70s. Okay, what you will find is for $4 or $5 a piece, you're going to get 10 authors that have short stories in there that you may like the author, you may not. But what you'll find in there is George R. R. Martin, Arthur C. Clarke, Heinlein, Isaac Asimov, all had different stories in there when they were working out story ideas. Like I have the original story in an analog that came out long before the book. That was the first ever story nugget that was called Orson Scott Card's
Ender's
Ender's
Game.
Game.
Yeah.
So it was first in analog, and I have the analog, and
Nice.
it's this sort of 50-page short story that became a novel that became a 5-part series or something now, and great stuff. So if you want to learn, if you want to read sci-fi but you're not like sure who to read, buy some
Start
old
with
analog magazines. They're not
start with
expensive.
those short stories and see which ones excite you.
Yeah, they're not expensive. They're easy to find. Right, you can have
Mhm.
them delivered to your house in 2-3 days.
Yeah, back in the 90s, I had a short-lived subscription, a year or two subscriptions to Analog and Asimov's at the time when they were still being published on the regular. And I can remember some. It was, of course, in the 90s, you weren't seeing so much of the legendary big names in your compilations, but there was some.
They weren't legendary when they started, right? They were
That's also true. Also true. Yeah, I mean, back when that magazine was published, nobody knew who Isaac Asimov was either.
Yeah, he was still a biochemistry professor someplace at one point. But yeah, MythBusters. I don't know if MythBusters proved that the fridge thing could be possible, but I think it really depended on how far away from the explosion you are. So.
Oh, right.
But I'm not gonna try it. Not.
And man, yeah, we got so many prove that. Oh, the fridge thing could be possible. I don't know. That's one of the few places I would probably doubt the MythBusters themselves.
MythBusters are. I loved MythBusters because they actually built stuff and did things, and I really do miss the days of decent documentaries. And yes. But MythBusters quickly pivoted into let's just blow a lot of crap up.
You're right. Because again, it's just like social media. You want to be thoughtful and thought-provoking and in-depth and profound and really, put some quality out into the world. But, booty posts are making millions over on wherever else,
Yeah.
Semi-naked women. That's what it is, and that's the thing. We should probably have like, solid, very serious readings of Mice and Men and things like that, but then like have women twerking as the visual of it. I see millions in our future. I think I nearly have this social media thing figured out. All right, we are at our time. Tim, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation and a ton of fun. And I still feel like there's so much I wanted to talk about and didn't have a chance to address. So
happy to come on again and do.
I'm going to be reaching out to you to set up a future date. And again, ladies and gentlemen, pay attention to the ticker at the bottom. You can follow Tim over on X at Timothy Imholt. You can find his books on Amazon and everywhere else books are sold. And also be sure to check out this One for All social because, as we were discussing earlier, having a social media strategy is key for growth. And social media is an aspect of your business and deserves to be taken seriously.
And if I can add to that, if you're on social media as a business, do not have every single post be spam. Nobody will ever follow you. Okay? Don't do it. 15% at best. Social media is meant to be social. Actually be social with people. That's the whole point.
Yeah, we all have to share the occasional choice funny meme or cat video, but don't make that your identity.
Don't make that your identity.
All right, Tim, is there any passing thoughts, final thoughts you would like to leave our devoted fan base with?
No, just the one thing in the RPG space that I harp on every day is I don't care what edition you play as long as you're having fun. Right? I really don't care if you're playing first, third, fifth, 12th, whatever. There's not a 12th, I know. The only one you'll probably never hear me talk about is fourth because I didn't really gel with it. But first, second, third, fifth, 5.5, whatever.
I find myself in the same boat. I haven't really gelled with anything since third edition, and where fourth edition went one way, I went with Castles and Crusades, and that was my thing ever since. But I'm in the same space, man. I want to see more people playing. I want everybody to have fun at their games. But like we talked about earlier, I do believe that there is room to have serious conversations about how to play our games better.
That's true. All right, everybody, have a good night.
Thank you, sir, and we will be back soon. Join us next week, 6 p.m. for another scintillating, exciting, exhilarating episode of Jawin with Jack. I've been Jack. This has been Tim. Next week, everybody.